We're going to get started with our next session. And I wanted to put a gentle ask out. If any of you would like to move a little bit closer down to the front of the room, that would be wonderful. It is my pleasure to introduce Lisa Nirell, is the Chief Energy Officer of Energized Growth. Innovative companies such as Adobe, Oracle, and Hilton hire Lisa to gain fresh insights, formulate new strategies, and launch breakthrough marketing ideas. She is the award-winning author of The Mindful Marketer, How to Stay Present and Profitable in a Data-Driven World. Be sure to join us at the conclusion of Lisa's session for her book signing. Some are also available for purchase. Get ready to start a mindful marketing revolution, and help me welcome Lisa Nirell.
Follow me back 7 years ago when I joined my relay swim team for our second attempt to swim from the island of Lanai to Maui. It was a sunny day, the water was relatively calm, and we were all feeling really excited. It was approximately a 9-mile race, and I was doing my part. I was feeling good. I got in the water, and all of a sudden, the weather conditions changed. We ended up with 6-foot swells, 15-knot winds, and a boat captain who really didn't understand the waters as much as he said he did. And I caught myself just swimming and feeling as if I wasn't really moving forward. It was really painful, and it ended up being about 11 miles of swimming between the 6 of us. How many of you often feel like your integrated marketing strategies also feel like you're slogging through the waters? If that's how you feel sometimes, then I'm excited to show you some ways that you can apply mindful marketing principles so that you can swim with a little bit more ease and grace. And in today's session, by the way, I really love interaction, and you always have the option to move a little closer for those of us who are slightly nearsighted. So please feel free to do that. And I just have a couple of simple rules. One is to follow what Joan Baez once said in her song, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. You're going to hear some controversial thoughts and ideas today that I've used with my clients over the last 14 years. So some of them will fit and some won't. So take what you need and leave the rest. And the other thing that I encourage you to do is ask a lot of questions and have fun during the session, because if you're enjoying and learning, then I am too. And also, I encourage you, unlike the other sessions, is feel free to turn off your phones and silence your phones, since this is about leading a mindful marketing revolution, not an insane marketing revolution. So with that, let me get started and tell you a few things that we're going to be covering today. The first is we're going to talk about the converse of mindful marketing, which is, what is mindless marketing? It's one of my favorite expressions. I'll give you some actual examples of that I think in the marketing profession we have perpetuated, and it's become a bit of a media frenzy. Second, I'm going to talk to you about some of the mindful marketing benefits by showcasing my own clients, as well as examples from my latest book that I think will inspire you and bring it into a more pragmatic level of conversation. And then I'll give you some very specific ideas to help you shift from what I call order taker marketing to being viewed in your organizations as strategic market makers. Let me take a quick poll. How many of you today work in a marketing role within a for-profit or a nonprofit organization? Okay, excellent. So a lot of hands went up. So what I'd like to do is make sure that what you learn today is, and the things you implement, Don't rely on your entire organization changing. That was one of the questions I got today on my Twitter feed was, how do we actually implement some of your ideas across our entire company culture? And what I'm going to say is, don't let that get in your way. Because what I truly believe is there are some things you can personally do that don't require money or executive commitment from your own organization. So I'm going to share some of those ideas with you as well. And what I do believe, first of all, is that it is possible, even with the frenzy of social media, the panoply of options you have available for your integrated marketing activities, and the amount of noise coming at us from our customers and our communities. It's possible to make that shift from being a tactical order taker who's measured on the number of likes you got on your Facebook page versus actual business results, to being more of a strategic market maker. You see, there are really only 3 areas you can focus your time in. The 3 areas are fixing yesterday's chronic problems that you may have inherited. Anybody been in that situation? You know, you're trying to fix things that didn't go well before you joined the organization, potentially. Number 2 is inbox management, which are today's daily issues or your to-do list. And the 3rd area you have the option to participate in and spend your time is creating the future. And as I've surveyed the last 2 years my chief marketing officers in my community, the one area they are screaming for more time to do is to participate with their executive teams and their own teams on creating what's next, as opposed to constantly being in crisis mode. So my goal is to show you that it is possible to get there. And it's by finding what I call and what I coined your inner marketing guru, which is your inside wisdom, your inner wisdom that doesn't come from your predictive analytics tool, your spreadsheets, or any of the other products available in your toolkit. It comes from your knowledge and from being able to stand back and use your critical thinking skills to determine what's best for your company as well as your customers. And you can learn these new habits in a very short period of time. And speaking of habits, we're going to try one right now. And what I'm going to ask you to do is make sure your devices are silenced. And for anyone experiencing withdrawal symptoms, I reassure you this will only be for the duration of the session. And now what I'm going to do is have us do an exercise. And we're going to start by my dimming the lights. I'm going to have you close your eyes for 1 minute and answer one question. And that question is, what's different with my work in the last week? So I invite you to just take 1 minute, and I'll put on my timer, and quietly answer that question. As we come back to the room, what was that experience like for you? I'd love to just hear some random shout outs about that. What was that experience like to go into an inquiry around what's different? This is called the interactive portion of our television programming. Yes.
I had to stop and think. I mean, I actually had to focus and think about what's different and come up with an answer.
So to repeat, she had, what is your name?
Laura.
Laura said, I actually had to stop and think and ask the question, what's different? What else? Yes.
It made me reflect on, what I accomplished during the week and how that was different than, other times, which led to anxiety of, oh, but I didn't finish this.
Very interesting noticing. So while you wanted to spend your time looking at, wow, look at all the things I checked off my list, oh, I didn't finish that, or maybe that didn't work as I planned. Right. Not unusual. The inner critic, also known as monkey mind, is really very powerful in most Western people's minds. And it tends to try to win the argument every time, doesn't it? Yes. What else?
Well, when you're only thinking about one thing, a minute actually is a long time. You can think about a lot of things in that time.
So for you, that 1 minute felt like an eternity. Yes, absolutely. Anything else?
I found myself rating what was different. So there are a lot of different things that happen, but then I had to kind of prioritize what really is the most different between the week before and the week now.
Right, so Jerome went right into, okay, here's the list, and now I better prioritize it. Absolutely no performance anxiety coming from you, right? None whatsoever, yes.
I think I started thinking about why it's different. I have like a lot of changes at my office happening right now, so I immediately was going into like, oh, this is different than last week because of this.
Very interesting. So not only did you say, I'm being the observer of my own life experience, I'm also starting to get into why.
Or I didn't go to yoga or whatever.
Right.
Whatever.
Oh, and that's the fun part of being human. The whole human experience is like, the two things we automatically want to do is we want to figure out why, and the other thing we always want to do is immediately dive into, I need to fix something, right? I need to fix or change this or this person or whatever, and we all know how that goes. Yes, time for one more.
I think so often we're focused on what we have to do next, and we don't take time to reflect on what we've done. So I think the point of reflection is a bit different.
Yes, thank you. It's because what I truly believe, and you hit the nail on the head, is instead of my being here telling you all the things you need to do more of, I'm suggesting to be a mindful marketer, you need to be more. And gift yourself with that first exercise. This was a first exercise of mindfulness, which was just taking a pause and saying, what's different? It's called a form of discernment, which is a gateway to critical thinking. And people often ask me, well, what is this thing you talk about in your book and with your clients called mindfulness? I simply define it as present moment awareness without judgment. If our moment of what's different, our quiet time is, I got to fix something, I've got, something's wrong, that's our other voice saying, okay, I'm judging, I'm fixing, I'm judging. I'm not just accepting, I'm trying to get in there and really, dig it up and dig around. So that's the way it's defined. And people often ask me, well, are you proselytizing some kind of religion? And the answer is absolutely not. This is tied more to the benefits of reflection in terms of how it retrains our brains to be more focused and effective in our jobs. And that's my real passion in life. Why I get up every morning and work with my CMOs and CEOs is to help them build better businesses and thrive in a time of major disruption in the marketing profession. So that's the main reason I love mindfulness, and I've been practicing it for the last 16 years, well before anyone really knew much about mindfulness in many business circles. The real tipping point, and I think this is important for you to know as integrated marketing experts, is that the tipping point around mindfulness happened in about February of 2014, when I saw the cover of Time magazine featuring mindfulness and the benefits of mindfulness-based stress reduction and how it helps change our neural networks and our patterns in our brains. And so the Dalai Lama 7 or 8 years ago was onto something when he started hanging out and hosting scientific symposia with some of the world's best neuroscientists to show that slowing down and reflecting and taking moments to practice discernment and mindfulness can be incredibly powerful and make our lives better. And it continued. I mean, I'm a fan of the Wall Street Journal, which is, was acquired by the Rupert Murdoch organization years ago, and yet they have some of the best articles on the benefits of different mindfulness practices on business leaders. So it's an activity, it's a movement whose time has come. And we have to at least pay attention to it. CEOs are being featured on how they use Kundalini Yoga as a way to stay more focused and effective with their teams. And the articles are almost weekly now in what used to be a rather is considered a highly conservative publication. And people will also ask me, well, what do you mean by mindfulness? Does it mean I have to meditate? And I say, well, first of all, you don't have to do anything. These are just ideas that you can embrace, try it on, throw it out, see if it works for you. And the gateways to mindfulness are different for everybody. I like taking walks in nature with no electronic devices. I like meditation. Some people like yoga, Reiki. How many of us have some form of mindfulness practice? Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Looks like about 60% of your hands went up. That's really exciting. And one of the things I've learned from my Buddhist teachers over the years is you also have to, to really understand a concept and how you can use it is often beneficial to show the opposite of that concept. And mindless marketing to me is one of the, I just pressed the wrong button. Mindless marketing is, thank you. Mindless marketing to me is best described by, I'm trying to go backwards. Thank you for being here. One more. Going back. Thank you. Can we please give a round of applause to this gentleman? I feel so much more mindful now. Mindless marketing, the image that it conjures up for me is trying to sit still and like this monk is doing, and you have bees constantly buzzing around your head, asking questions like, why? Or, that was stupid, or, you're not good enough, or, who did that? Those are the typical bees that buzz around us when we're putting together our marketing activities. And there's a lot of technology is to blame for this. See, I just modeled that by showing how foolish I am with these remote devices. There was just an article about debate about the use of technology in the classroom, and what I really love was this quote from the president of Goucher College. And I'd like you to take a read at this, because I think it really hones in on my perspective and my own experience of when marketing professionals over-rely on technology, are constantly tethered to it, even when they're sitting in bed at night and they're checking emails. And the one thing that he really says that resonated with me is bringing technology into the classroom doesn't solve that problem. In fact, it is a distraction from the real solution. Teachers taking the time to help students learn to process and think. In some sessions I've led where we've talked about the mindful marketing revolution, some people have come up to me afterwards and said, that 1 minute of asking what's different was the only time this entire week that I ever did that. Thank you very much. So what I'm proposing to you is that mindless marketing is when we don't know when to turn off the technology. and use our own inner wisdom. Multitasking, of course, is I would give this the Mindless Marketing Award, because multitasking shows up in forms of texting while driving, texting and using your smartphone while you're socializing at the dinner table with friends, or worse than that, family members, letting your children use electronic devices when you're dining out. My least favorite form of multitasking is people using their devices while using the public restrooms. But that's just me. And I've actually seen mothers in I'm an active swimmer, as you've noticed, mothers using their smartphones in front of their children while the children are in the public showers. They can't even turn off their phones for that quiet time that most of us are naked in the locker rooms. And those are what I consider mindless forms of marketing that many communications professionals are perpetuating. And what I mean by that is just while perusing People magazine, of course I don't actually buy People magazine, I hide it surreptitiously under my sweater or something when I'm sitting in a waiting room, kind of pretending, hoping no one notices I'm reading People. But there was this ad that really stuck out for me, which was a picture of a 35-year-old woman, quite pretty, and it was an ersatz journal that she was writing about her life called the CC Cream Diaries. And she was an aspiring actress, and this is what her diary said. I'm at the gym at 6:30 a.m. studying the script on the treadmill, multitasking number one. Number two, she's in the wardrobe, talking about her makeup session. And then multitasking number three, grab a coffee at 9:30, I chat on the phone with a friend while waiting for my latte. How many of you have been annoyed standing in line for coffee where someone's yip-yapping on their phone and they're slowing down the line because they've lost focus? This is the mindless marketing that I believe, as a marketing revolutionary, as a mindful marketer, we have to put a stop to this kind of advertising. Not only because it's ludicrous, but there are reams of scientific data that demonstrate that multitasking dumbs us down. It literally causes us, and I read scores of research on this, that if you're in your office working on something that's important, some focused activity, and you let people continually interrupt you, you lose on average 26 minutes of focus time. And so I'm again suggesting not to stop multitasking, but just to say, do I want to show up to work as my best self, or do I want to dumb down my work experience? You have the choice. How many of you have felt in your jobs like a McDonald's drive-through window? Hello, this is the marketing department. How may I help you? You want how many brochures? What trade show are we going to? By what time? Oh, you want a social media campaign for our newest product. Okay. Would you like that in red or blue? Special orders don't upset us. This is perpetuated by multitasking behaviors because they think this person is a superstar. They can do it all. We've got to break the pattern by looking at our own behaviors as order takers. I want to drill down a little more beyond the multitasking into other activities and behaviors that I have practiced that have not served me well as my clients over the years, that I invite you to also consider. By the way, is this resonating with you folks so far? Is this making sense? Okay, great. The first one I'm going to talk about is marketing speak. That is the first area to explore is, am I practicing mindless marketing by the language that I'm using in not only my communication with customers, but also with my team? One of my mentors, Alan Weiss, has a great expression that I love. Language controls the discussion. Discussion controls relationships. And relationships control the business. So you perform very important roles in your organization because you are the language masters. And you have to ask yourself, what language am I using? Because that is really the gateway to how we are perceived and through our brands. And also we have the other cause of order taker perception, which is erratic financial reporting cadence, which I'll get to, and outdated demand creation models, also known as the funny funnels. So we'll get to those, but let's start with the first one. Marketing speak. I read a book by Steve Yastrow called We. I highly recommend it because he breaks this down into some expressions that continue to linger in our marketing vernacular and are, I think, time for us to retire them. Ladies and gentlemen, I am hereby declaring that using constant military metaphors and male sports metaphors are really, really tiresome. Many of us that buy products and services from your companies do not study military history, maybe to our own detriment because there's a lot to learn. But we hear a lot of it. We hear a lot about football and baseball. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many other metaphors available to us beyond those. We have to start looking at our language when we're talking and reporting on our progress. We're attacking the target market with a rifle shot approach. Really? You want to talk about your customers through the lens of war? Is that how you want your... This is an example, not bad or good, it's an example of mindless marketing. We're in a fierce battle with the competition to capture market share. I worked for a company called BMC Software in sales and in marketing for a number of years. And I remember the exhaustion I felt because we had one competitor who just was so nimble and so agile. And I give them a lot of respect. It doesn't mean I love them, but I respected them. And we were using these terms constantly. And all I remember is how tired and irritated I always was when I talked about platinum technology. And it's no wonder because we treated them like they were the enemy. Instead of saying, there could be some things we could actually learn from these people, we've scheduled a volley of advertising for the fall. Again, more and more, sports and military metaphors. Let's expand our horizons and think a little differently. How many of us here have double majors or are passionate about finance and financial reporting? Okay, we saw 2 hands go up, and the rest of you lost eye contact with me. Let's talk about where that can work against us and cause mindless marketing. I host a number of CMO breakfasts and events in the Washington, D.C. area because many CMOs tell me they have no safe haven they can go to share ideas and innovate, as well as meet other like-minded individuals. And we had Joe Payne, the former CEO of Eloqua, come and speak to our group. And I love his quote. He said, CEOs are from Mars and CMOs are from Venus. And he said, just think about the staff meetings. And raise your hand if any of you have this experience. The VP of Sales and the CFO report on how earnings, revenues, and renewals compare to previous quarters. Conversely, your VP of Marketing may report on the latest Twitter campaign at one meeting and the number of trade show leads at the next. This is where the Mars and Venus conundrum comes into place and creates this constant vicious circle of mindless marketing. So how do we get ourselves in the same cadence as well as in the same dictionary of language with the rest of the executives in the organization, so that we are not constantly being either prodded or scrutinized for the great work that we're doing? Well, one way that I recommend my clients do this is to recognize, one, that your reporting metrics are going to change over time because through the lens of your products and services, they reach different levels of growth and maturity. So this is from a former McKinsey consultant who says look at your products over a time horizon. If you have a product, for example, that you're thinking about, that's maybe how many of you have more than one product or service that you're responsible for marketing, right? So if you look through the lens of this horizon model, it's really helpful to help you get your language and your reporting structures more in alignment with what the board of directors and your investors care about. So looking first at the horizon 36 to 72 months, ask yourself, as an integrated marketing professional, how do I create programs that create new categories? My job is to create a new category. Maybe I am trailblazing a whole new category that no one has heard about. I'm disrupting an existing competitor. So there, I need some name brand customers. I need PR and social media buzz. Those are the metrics my investors and people are going to care about. However, as I'm moving across the horizon, we're getting closer to launch. Down here in the 0 to 12 month, then I care about market share and wallet share of the customer. I care about revenue against plan. So how do I take my integrated marketing programs and make sure that I'm beginning with the end in mind, which are the key goals, both qualitative and quantitative, and working backwards to make sure that our programs in some capacity are fueling and accelerating those key areas. And this is where you get to have some courage and break free of that order taker mode, because you can also be very confident if you're working with brand new, not yet released products and services to say, we need a lot more resources. So we're going to have to rush over here and start recruiting Jerome and some other resources, even if it's for only 6 to 9 months, to join our team and help us, because we need more gasoline to fuel the automobile to move this product closer to general availability. Making sense? So there's a lot of there's so much more we could talk about this. I wanted you to just have that as a framework to help you in building your influence and the way you communicate internally as a strategic market maker. So that's something to consider. And then finally, the third thing that causes us to be viewed as order takers is an outdated demand creation model. I have upset a few analyst firms who will remain nameless, because I have many times said that the old demand creation model is no longer suited to our customers and how they buy. Whether you're in a business how many of us sell products and services to other businesses? Right? And then how many of us sell to individual people? How many of us sell to both? Right, so I saw hands go for the third, hands went up for the third category, because many times you have to juggle both. And Scott really eloquently talked about this morning how customers really are in charge. So we have to listen to them and be willing to recognize that they can often be our best salespeople, yes? So how do we create a demand creation model that captures that change in how they're buying and how they're behaving? When I started in marketing, it was all about filling that pipeline with leads. That measuring and reporting on how many leads I can get through the pipeline and making sure I fill that funnel so my salespeople are happy. Does that sound familiar? Right? And if anything went wrong, it was usually because the leads were not good or we didn't have enough leads. A little bit of Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross sprinkled in there, but that's typically how we have looked at creating demand as marketers and contributing to revenue within our respective organizations. This model is old and no longer reflects how customers think and behave, because today we have beautiful opportunities to capture the hearts and minds of our customers, delight them, create an amazing customer experience, which Scott talked about earlier. and build communities of happy customers that can then talk to each other. And we're going to talk about some actual models that are working really well in this area. So this, if we want to break free of order taker mode and move into market maker mode, we can do it by reframing how we think of customers and getting rid of this belief that our jobs as marketers are done once we got somebody through the funnel and closed a sale. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a few quick questions. Who has some questions so far on what you're seeing? Yes?
Hi, I'm Ashley. I practice meditation, yoga, and I'm also a certified Reiki healer. So I really appreciate everything you're saying today. Do you feel that even though I do all that, I still have a really hard time when I'm stressed taking that mindfulness and peacefulness that I might have when I'm meditating or something and applying to the stressful situation? And before you know, I have ADD head, I'm trying to do 1,000 things at once. And it's really hard to slip in and out of that. And I think it's mostly because no one really teaches you how to, they'll tell you to meditate, but they don't really teach you how to apply that moment to stressful situations. Do you feel that in the next 30 years or so, it might be mandatory to teach meditation in schools and teach people how to apply that?
I'm going to go ahead. What is your first name?
Ashley.
Ashley, I'm going to repeat your question and summarize it. Do I believe it should be mandatory for us to teach meditation in schools
So that we can learn the balance.
so that we can learn how to balance our lives and also deal with stressful situations? Yes? This took me years to figure out. And I think one of my best teachers is my husband. We've been together 26 years. And for my first probably 17 years of marriage, I tried to fix or change him and, push my agenda. And boy, did I fail miserably. Our relationship really didn't blossom, I don't think, until after I said, I'm not here to fix or change things, And I think the same goes for meditation or any form of mindfulness, which can be, as I said, walking in nature. It can be yoga, anything that resonates with you. My goal is to do the best I can do as an individual, and if it helps somebody, I'm a happy person. Where I think we get into a slippery slope is when anything is considered mandatory, because it goes against my own mindfulness principles about being unattached and being and letting people discover the things on their own that work for them.
But then there's
So,
also mandatory, like computers and iPads now in school.
mandatory computers and iPads. I am going to leave that question to people who have children. I have no children, and I don't track the mandatory requirements of Common Core or equipments and that's required for students. I don't really have much knowledge in that area. However, I do tend to side with the president of Goucher College and what he said earlier is creating quiet time to think. So thank you. Yes?
Checking for understanding here on this erratic financial reporting cadence. Seems like you're suggesting that we sort of perpetuate order taking by marketers reporting on inconsistent reports, metrics, every quarter, while counterparts in finance, CEOs are reporting on the same thing over and over.
Correct. That is correct. So,
Suggesting that we should create metrics that are the same, similar every quarter, but yet it seemed like the slide that was up there is suggesting that if we're in a 1 to 12 month horizon, that's a different set of metrics, or if we're in
Right.
4 to 30. So can you clarify that?
to repeat the question is, what am I suggesting in terms of financial reporting and cadence based on the slides?
Best practice.
Best practice. So the best practice I recommend where my clients do their best work is, first of all, to really be an influencer and really help educate your executive team on why having a dashboard of any sort, a reporting dashboard, benefits everybody, number one. Now, I know that sounds really basic. You'd be amazed how many companies I've worked with who have no dashboard. and their metrics are changing constantly based on where the wind's blowing. So that's number one, is having a company-wide dashboard, which I talked about in my first book, with just, even if it's a handful of metrics, can be really powerful in getting everyone aligned around what's important. Number two, the time horizons model I showed you is a tool. It's an optional tool you can use as a marketer to get out of order taker mode, which is, oh, this week we're going to talk about how many new likes we got, or how many people came to the booth at the trade show. That may have absolutely no correlation whatsoever to your company's top 3 goals of capturing market share or winning new customers in the West Coast market. Am I making sense? So you've got to find ways to reconcile those things and stop falling in love with your Facebook and your social media metrics, because Insight Group, which studied this, showed there was no correlation between number of new likes and followers on most social media platforms with increases in revenues. So we have to be really aware of that. Time for one more question, then we'll move on. Yes?
In my previous position, I was responsible for tracking inbound and outbound what was happening with the leads that came in and returned them over to the sales department. We had weekly meetings where I'd be like, this is how much has come in, and here are some things, key metrics that I've identified. These people are really big whales, go after them. These are medium size, and everybody just kind of went for the whales and they missed the medium size and totally ignored the little guys. But I would give them that data, spoon feed it to them, and then they would do nothing with it. And then the next week had that same conversation, and the next week had the same conversation.
And what's your question?
How do you get the sales team to listen?
Okay,
to your recommendations?
Great, thank you. The question is, how do we get sales to listen to our recommendations for how to manage and deal with the leads coming in? I get that question a lot. And if any of you are familiar with the company Blackboard, I really got inspired by their president of global marketing, Tim Hill, and he's featured in my book. And one of the things he did that really helped him immensely with helping sales understand the value of marketing so that they were viewed as strategic market makers was he and the vice presidents of sales of all of the divisions of Blackboard would sit down and they would form and write a service level agreement. And they would say, for this division, Jerome, what is your sales goal this year? Okay, based on that, let's back up. Let's look at how many leads we need. How many will be sourced from sales? How many will be sourced from our live events? How many will be sourced from the web? And so forth. And based on that, you know, we have to look at how many we need in order to reach our sales goal based on our average selling price. So they had an actual one-pager that they created together and signed off on it. Said, this is the part I'm responsible for, and this is the part you're responsible for, and we're going to adjust this as we go. And I have an example of that in my book, if you're interested. It is so powerful because you're sitting together at the same table and you have the same goals and metrics that you're aiming for. Was that helpful?
Yeah.
All right, great. We'll talk. Service level agreements, it puts you at the same, your peers to sales. One of the words I don't like using is saying we serve sales. You advise and help sales, yes. However, you can both be peers and contribute to the same goals of the company. So speaking of contributing to goals, the first recommendation I have to become more of a mindful marketer is setting your proper intentions around your language. How you use your language in meetings, in presentations, and in your integrated marketing campaigns. I'll give you some examples in a moment. Then we're going to talk about some simple things you can do to run your meetings in a mindful way, and then we'll look at how you design your communities, which I think Ashley might be very helpful and resonate with you. Here's a source that you probably wouldn't expect to see at a marketing conference. However, Dr. David Hawkins' work really had an impact on me. He wrote a book called Power versus Force. And for his 50 years as a doctor, he studied human potential and energy and how our thoughts and our language impact those around us and our life experience. He created a scale from 0 to 1,000 using kinesiology and muscle testing, and learned that humans who live under 250, at this certain frequency of 250 megahertz or lower, live in a place of fear, worry, doubt, skepticism, and anger. But once we have two life experiences, our lives open up, our language changes, and the people around us notice a difference. The two things that happen to humans that change our frequency and our vibration are, number one, accepting responsibility for our lives and our actions in the world. So we stop blaming the government, we stop blaming the economy, we stop blaming our friends and our mother who didn't love me enough. So we get out of that whole blame game and we start owning our life experience. And the other thing that he learned is that when we reach 500 megahertz on this scale of 0 to 1,000, our lives transform even more when we start to love others unconditionally. And so those were a couple of big ahas in his work. And when we do this, have those changes, our language also changes. And again, I think this affects the way in which we communicate and design our integrated marketing approaches and campaigns. If we have low energy language in campaigns, we're probably using words like target. We're pitching somebody. Do you know how many PR firms call me because they want to pitch something? I can't stand that word. Pushing. We're going to push our thoughts and our ideas on other people. We're going to pursue this market. I'm not even going to say penetrate. Not my favorite word. Vendor partner. That one's my least favorite. When I used to sell technology and large systems integration solutions, I knew I was in trouble when they said, we need you to go talk to the vendor relations department, also known as the purchasing department, affectionately known as the sales prevention department. Because their job was to squeeze us, of course, for every dollar they could. So what I say to people is, instead of using that language, how about we talk about serving our customers? Here's a radical idea. How about we stop using the word consumer and forcing people to consume our products? We're just there to serve and converse and to shepherd them and guide them towards a decision that's empowering and right for them. To nurture their relationship with us and expand. I'm still kind of toying with expand. I'm not sure if I even like it, but partnering with our customers. So these are high energy, high frequency terms that we can use in lieu of these low energy terms that foster anger, fear, doubt, and worry in our customers. Some things to consider and try on. Mindful meetings. I know a few clients who wear as a badge of honor the fact that they had 14 meetings today. And they're always dashing to the next meeting with no room to spare. No time to stop and, get themselves a glass of water or a cup of tea or a coffee because they're dashing from meeting to meeting. What if mindful marketers create a little breathing space of 10 or 15 minutes between their meetings to look at what worked, what didn't work in my last meeting? What are my intentions for my next meeting so I can be present and fully aware of what we're going to accomplish? We're going to talk about min-max in our meetings, which is how many of us before a meeting write down what's my minimum best outcome from this meeting? What would be the ultimate best outcome from this meeting? Oh, that would be great if we can accomplish that. How many of us are doing that right now and setting our min-max? We've got a couple of hands in the back. It's really empowering and a great way to kind of get centered and focused. And then a check-in process. So think about your breathing space that you're creating on your calendar. Do you really need to have 14 meetings a day? Is there a way you can prioritize them to give yourself that breathing space to step back and say, what did I learn from the last meeting? What's different from the last week's meeting? so that you can be more effective and decisive about things. The check-in process is another idea to consider, which is first of all, how many of us lead status meetings or participate in status meetings for our given integrated marketing projects? Think about this 5-minute check-in process. It's a ritual that I do with my CMO groups. It's a ritual many of my CMOs are now using in their own companies. Just by standing back and saying to your group, so what's different since we last met? What material changes have you seen in our customers since our meeting last month? What worked in your performance? So you can award yourself a little reward of some sort. Or what didn't work in your performance? And what are our intentions for this meeting? And for what are we grateful as a team? A little gratitude is a high energy, high frequency term that you can also weave into your marketing conversations. Even an optometrist in Missouri has found great success with this. He was noticing he has a number of different locations for his optometrist practice, and he noticed there started to be a lot of tension between the patients and the front desk. And he put together what he called MOM meetings, Monday Opportunity Meetings. And he brought his groups together to find out what's working across our offices, what isn't working, what are we grateful for, and let's shine a light on things that are working and fix what's not working as quickly as possible. And now they rank in the top 2% of the most profitable optometry practices and rated the top 10 in the state of Missouri. So he said, without those kinds of practices, to do a quick check-in for 5 to 10 minutes with our meetings, I wouldn't be able to have that level of success and team alignment. So it doesn't take, you could use software like 15.5, if any of you have heard of 15.5. It's used by hundreds of companies around the world, where you can automate this through a cloud-based solution, or you can just have a series of 3 to 4 questions that you can ask your group. TripAdvisor's another example. Barbara Messing does an excellent job of hosting mindful meetings. She bans electronic devices from their annual team retreat dinners. Everybody's actually looking at each other and having conversations without technology. And she has 3 specific rules that she follows, which is bring people out to change the scenery. Let's get outside the office. Let's make sure we're disconnected when we're having meetings. So unless you need to schedule an appointment with someone, but otherwise we're having face-to-face live conversations with people. And then she has karaoke parties, which is really fun because she's the first person to go at the karaoke party, she said, and the goal is to make sure everybody feels okay being embarrassed, because that's my goal. And then it kind of lets people's guards down. And TripAdvisor's employee engagement scores have been really impressive. And finally, designing your communities. I'm going to zip through this because there are 3 kinds of communities to consider. You have peer communities, you have customer communities, and you have your own community, what's inside yourself. There's a book written by a Google executive called Search Inside Yourself that I highly recommend, and that's finding your inner marketing guru. Look for peer groups where you can practice mindful marketing. Create a LinkedIn group, free of charge, where you can share ideas. Create a Google Hangout once a month where you can share. Those are some pictures of my own peer group in the Washington area. And from a customer perspective, consider the branded customer community route. How many of us know what a branded customer community is? This is actually a technology platform that has evolved in the last 5 years that goes well beyond listservs and LinkedIn groups and allows customers by being moderated by your company to share ideas, solve problems, suggest new product ideas for the company, and ask questions very quickly and get answers. And there are a number of companies like Procter & Gamble and others who've been very successful because Insight Research found that customer communities post the best content and can be some of your sources of the best integrated marketing content possible. Many people will go first to the branded customer community before they will contact you and ask questions, which is a very interesting phenomenon to look into. Salesforce now has an MVP program that's grown from 200,000 to 1.6 million people within the last 4 years. So they're very powerful. And so customers, as you know, are controlling the conversation. Ask yourself, how do I fortify my own inner marketing guru community? What do I need in my life? Usually there are 5 areas to consider, which is family. How do they support me to be a mindful marketer? How do I put fun into my life? How do I eat the right foods to give me the energy I need? How do I put fitness into my life? And then how do I create focus rituals? Ashley talked about several. Which one resonates with me that I can practice it every day? I'm 4 weeks into using an app called Headspace, which gives me 15 minutes a day. And I figure, being mindful, I think I can make 15 minutes a day to be a little more mindful, focused, and clear about what my intentions are for the day. You have to discover what those things are for you and what works. As we wrap up, let me ask you, how many of you right now have come up with at least 2 or 3 ideas from this discussion that you could do differently or test in your own organizations or life? Well, here's a matrix you can use to help you prioritize. Because I realized we all have busy lives and we can't implement everything. So what I suggest you do is look at this matrix, a 2x2 matrix, as a way to prioritize what you can do right away. If you look at what's the easiest to implement along the x-axis, and what has the most business value for your organization or even your own life on the y-axis, and just take a look at where are my quick hits. What's going to be pretty quick and easy to implement and really could benefit me and my team and my integrated marketing activities. If it's really tough to implement, I need some cultural buy-in, I have a difficult boss perhaps that may not support this, I'm going to start investing in it in the long term. If it's really difficult and it has no value in the company, put it way in the lower left, and then pursue the others opportunistically if they don't really have much strategic value. So I'm going to ask you to take another 30 seconds to just take a moment and write down some things that might fit in some of those quadrants. What I also encourage you to do is I will be signing books here outside the door, and if some of you want to share your ideas about what new things you're going to try and put into practice to be a more mindful marketer, come and share them with me. We might actually tweet them later, and you might even be featured on one of my blogs coming up. So I really do want to hear from you what worked. Now, as you're looking here, I want to wrap this up by telling you that Suzanne Bowen is a friend of mine who is 57. She recently swam Manhattan Island, which is 27 miles. And she and I have done the same race in Bermuda now, going on at least, well, for her more, but 3 years for me. And I swim a 4,000 meter race. She swims the 10,000 meter race. And for her to prepare for something like the Manhattan Island swim, she has days where she swims 15,000 meters in a swimming pool. And for some of you, that might sound pretty tedious. And I said to her, how in the world, Suzanne, do you stay focused? Talk about focus for a 15,000 meter swim. And she said, well, I get a lot of support from my husband, Phil, and I have one of the best coaches, Jim, and they keep me going. So I want to remind you is another thing she said to me, which is, even though I'm doing these solo swims, there's nothing solo about a solo swim. So as you design your communities and your life to be a mindful marketer, think about who you want on your boat. And remember that you're not swimming alone. Come join us at the table. I'll sign your books. I'll have some for sale. And if you want to start on this journey right away, download this free survey off my website. It takes 2.5 minutes. See where you stand on the mindful marketing meter. And be ever present and mindful. Thank you.